I offered my seat to an alien stranger. Now she thinks we're married. The unexpected encounter. Jackson Porter's headache pulsed in perfect rhythm with the airport announcements. 3 days of presenting architectural designs to demanding clients in Boston had left him exhausted, irritable, and eager to return to his quiet apartment in Portland. The delayed flight hadn't helped his mood. Final boarding call for Flight 2187 to Portland. The announcement blared as Jackson hurried toward the gate, his laptop bag banging against his hip. Through some miracle of frequent flyer status, he'd been upgraded to first class, a small comfort on this terrible day. The gate agent scanned his boarding pass with practiced efficiency. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Porter. Seat 3A is on the left." Jackson settled into the plush window seat with a sigh of relief. First class meant no crying bobbies, no cramped legroom, and most importantly, a stiff drink before takeoff. He closed his eyes, imagining the blissful solitude of his apartment. "Excuse me, sir." The flight attendant's voice pulled him back to reality. "There's been a situation." Jackson opened one eye. "What kind of situation?" The flight attendant lowered her voice. "We have a passenger with special diplomatic status who needs accommodation in first class, but we're fully booked. The airline would be extremely grateful if you'd consider moving to premium economy. We'd offer compensation, of course." "Diplomatic status," Jackson frowned, "like an ambassador." "Something like that," the attendant replied with an odd expression. "We can offer you unlimited free flights for a year." Jackson's architect brain calculated quickly. His business required frequent travel. A year of free flights would save thousands. "Deal," he said, gathering his belongings. As he stood to leave, he caught his first glimpse of the diplomat. She stood in the jet bridge, tall and striking with unusual copper-toned skin that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. Her hair fell in waves of deep burgundy, and her eyes, Jackson blinked twice. Her eyes were an impossible shade of amber with vertical pupils like a cat's. "Contact lenses," he murmured to himself, "has to be." The woman turned those strange eyes toward him, and Jackson felt a jolt of electricity run down his spine. She was beautiful in an unsettling, otherworldly way. "This is Mr. Porter," the flight attendant explained to the woman. "He's graciously offered you his seat." The woman's face transformed with a smile. "Your generosity honors me," she said in a melodic accent Jackson couldn't place. "I am Leona." "Jackson," he replied automatically, extending his hand. Instead of shaking it, Leona placed both of her hands around his. Her skin was warm, unnaturally warm, and Jackson felt a subtle vibration where they touched. "I accept your offer with gratitude," she said solemnly, her eyes locked on his. Something about the formality of her response struck Jackson as odd, but he was too tired to dwell on it. "No problem. Enjoy the flight." As he made his way to premium economy, which, despite the fancy name, was still decidedly economy, Jackson dismissed the strange interaction. The woman was probably some foreign dignitary with eccentric fashion choices. Nothing more. The flight passed uneventfully. Jackson dozed through most of it, waking only when the plane began its descent into Portland. As passengers prepared to disembark, he gathered his belongings, mentally calculating how quickly he could reach his apartment and fall into bed. The unexpected tap on his shoulder startled him. He turned to find a stern-faced man in a dark suit standing in the aisle. "Mr. Porter, I need you to remain seated until other passengers have deplaned." Jackson frowned. "Why, what's this about?" "Security matter," the man replied cryptically. "Please comply." Too tired to argue, Jackson slumped back in his seat, watching as other passengers filed past. Once the plane had emptied, the suited man gestured for him to follow. "My luggage," Jackson began. "Is being handled," the man cut him off. In the jet bridge, Jackson was surprised to see Leona waiting, flanked by two more suited individuals. Up close, her unusual features were even more pronounced. The coppery tone of her skin had an iridescent quality that shifted with the light. "Jackson Porter," she said, her voice carrying a note of authority he hadn't noticed before. "We must speak privately." Before he could protest, Jackson found himself whisked through a side door, down a series of corridors, and into a private lounge he hadn't known existed in Portland's modest airport. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded once the door closed behind them. Leona studied him with those strange amber eyes. "You are confused. This is understandable." "Understandable. Lady, I was just escorted off my flight by men who look like Secret Service agents. Confused doesn't begin to cover it." Leona turned to one of her companions. "Leave us." The suited figures nodded and stepped outside, closing the door. "Jackson Porter, I must inform you of something significant," she said, her posture regal. "I am not what you believe me to be." "A diplomat," Jackson guessed weakly. "I am Ambassador Leona Voltari, representative of the Ardelian Confederation to Earth." Jackson stared. "The what now?" "I am not human," she stated simply. "My people established contact with your world's governments 3 years ago. We maintain a quiet presence while formal relations develop." Jackson laughed nervously. "Right, and I'm the King of England." Without speaking, Leona touched a device on her wrist. The air shimmered around her, and suddenly her appearance shifted subtly. Her skin now definitely copper-toned with faint scale-like patterns, her eyes larger and more luminous, with unmistakably vertical pupils. Jackson stumbled backward into a chair. "Holy shit. This is my natural appearance, merely enhanced by the perception filter I usually employ." "You're an alien," Jackson whispered. "An actual extraterrestrial." "Ardelian," she corrected. "And yes, by your definition." Jackson's mind raced through every science fiction movie he'd ever watched. "Are you going to probe me or something?" Leona's expression shifted to what might have been amusement. "That is a persistent and inaccurate human myth. I have no interest in your physical examination." "Then what do you want from me?" "To inform you of our betrothal." Jackson blinked. "Our what now?" "When you offered me your seat and I accepted your hands, you initiated a sacred Ardelian ceremonial proposal. By Ardelian law, we are now formally engaged to be joined." Jackson stood up abruptly. "That's insane. I was just being polite." "Cultural misunderstandings are common in interspecies relations," Leona acknowledged. "However, the ceremony was witnessed by the flight attendant, making it legally binding under the Interstellar Diplomatic Accords of 2022. There's no way offering an airline seat counts as a marriage proposal," Jackson protested. "Not marriage yet," Leona corrected. "Merely a formal engagement. The joining ceremony would come later." Jackson ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Look, can't we just call it off? Say it was a mistake?" "Breaking an engagement with an Ardelian royal is considered a serious diplomatic incident," Leona said, her voice cooling. "The last such occurrence resulted in the termination of a planet-wide trade agreement." "Royal," Jackson's voice cracked. "Your royalty." "I am second heir to the Ardelian Confederation's Sovereign Council," she confirmed, "which is why this situation is particularly delicate." Jackson slumped back into the chair. "This can't be happening. I'm just an architect from Portland." "Not anymore," Leona said almost gently. "Now you are the betrothed of an Ardelian royal. The diplomatic implications are significant. Can't you just, I don't know, pardon me or something? Royal prerogative." "It's not that simple," Leona sighed, and for the first time Jackson glimpsed something vulnerable beneath her regal exterior. "My position on Earth is tenuous. There are factions among both our peoples who oppose our alliance. This engagement could either strengthen or destroy everything we've worked for." "So what happens now?" Jackson asked, suddenly aware he was discussing interstellar politics with an alien princess in an airport lounge. "You will accompany me to the Ardelian embassy in Seattle," Leona said. "There, we will discuss the path forward with my advisors." "Seattle, I can't just leave. I have projects, clients." "Your professional obligations have been accommodated," Leona interrupted, "and you will be generously compensated for any inconvenience." Jackson stared at her. "You planned for all this, before I even offered you my seat." "No," Leona admitted, "but Ardelians are efficient when necessary." As if on cue, the door opened, and one of the suited figures returned. "The transport is ready, Ambassador." Leona extended her hand to Jackson. "Will you come willingly? I would prefer not to compel you." Jackson looked at her outstretched hand, copper-toned and elegant. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been impressing clients with his building designs. Now, he was apparently engaged to an alien royal and caught in the middle of interstellar diplomacy. "Do I actually have a choice?" he asked. Leona's strange eyes studied him. "There are always choices, Jackson Porter, but some paths are smoother than others." With a deep breath, Jackson took her hand. "Let's go to Seattle." Diplomatic complications. The Ardelian embassy wasn't what Jackson had expected. From the outside, it resembled an ordinary office building in downtown Seattle, its only distinguishing feature the subtle copper-toned reflective glass of its windows. Inside, however, was another story entirely. "This way," Leona guided him through a security checkpoint, where guards with the same coppery skin and amber eyes regarded him with undisguised curiosity. The elevator they entered had no buttons. Instead, Leona placed her palm against a smooth panel and they began moving. When the doors opened, Jackson gasped involuntarily. The embassy's upper floor was a stunning blend of Earth architecture and alien aesthetics, soaring ceilings with geometric patterns that seemed to shift subtly, furniture that looked both organic and crystalline, and walls that changed color with the angle of view. "Your world's design principles intrigue us," Leona commented, noticing his architect's appreciation. "Perhaps your professional insights will prove valuable." "If we're actually engaged," Jackson said, still struggling with the concept, "shouldn't I know something about you? Beyond your title, I mean." Something like amusement flickered across Leona's features. "A reasonable request. I am 42 of your Earth years old, though Ardelians have longer lifespans. I have served as ambassador for 3 years. Before that, I was a theoretical physicist specializing in interspatial dynamics." "A scientist and a princess," Jackson murmured, "and I thought dating in Portland was complicated." "This is not a dating situation," Leona corrected, though her tone softened. "It is a diplomatic union of significant consequence." Before Jackson could respond, the air shimmered, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. An older Ardelian with elaborately patterned copper skin regarded them with stern amber eyes. "Second heir," the figure addressed Leona. "The council demands explanation." "High Advisor Torin," Leona bowed slightly. "May I present Jackson Porter of Earth?" The holographic figure turned those intimidating eyes toward Jackson. "This is the human who initiated the binding ceremony. He offered his seat on an aircraft," Leona explained, "and I accepted in the traditional manner." Torin made a sound that might have been a snort. "Convenient timing, considering the Draconid delegation arrives tomorrow." Jackson glanced at Leona, who maintained a neutral expression. "The timing was unanticipated," she replied carefully. "I'm sure," Torin's tone dripped with skepticism. "The Sovereign Council expects you both at the diplomatic reception. The human must be prepared." "Prepared how?" Jackson interrupted. "And who are the Draconids?" Torin regarded him like an insect. "He doesn't know anything, does he?" "Cultural exchange takes time," Leona replied diplomatically. "We don't have time," Torrin snapped. The Draconids are our chief rivals for Earth's resource markets. They'll use any advantage, including an inappropriate royal engagement, to undermine our position. Resource markets, Jackson frowned. What exactly are you trading for? Later, Leona touched his arm in warning. High Advisor, I assure you Jackson will be adequately prepared. See that he is, Torrin replied. The consequences of failure would be regrettable. The hologram disappeared. Jackson turned to Leona. That sounded like a threat. Ardelian politics are complex, she sighed, suddenly looking weary. And I have not been entirely forthcoming with you. You don't say, Jackson replied dryly. Leona moved to a window overlooking Seattle's skyline. The truth is, this engagement is either extraordinarily fortunate or catastrophically inconvenient, depending on one's perspective. Care to elaborate? The Draconids are a commercial empire seeking exclusive access to Earth's rare minerals. My faction favors open trade that benefits both our worlds. Others in my government would prefer more aggressive acquisition methods. So I'm what? A political pawn? An unexpected variable, Leona corrected. Royal engagements create binding treaty obligations that even the most aggressive factions must respect. Jackson processed this. So our accidental engagement might actually protect Earth from exploitation. Potentially, Leona agreed, if it's regarded as legitimate. And if it's not, then I lose political standing, Earth loses protection, and you, she hesitated. What happens to me? Jackson pressed. Best not to speculate, she replied evasively. A chime interrupted them as the elevator doors opened. A young human woman in business attire stepped out, carrying what looked like clothing. Ambassador, the preparation team is ready. She nodded respectfully to Leona before turning to Jackson. Mr. Porter, I'm Diana Hughes, human liaison to the embassy. I'll be helping you prepare for tomorrow's reception. Prepare how exactly? Jackson asked warily. Protocol, etiquette, basic Ardelian customs, Diana explained, and fitting you for appropriate attire. Leona moved toward the elevator. I must attend to other matters. Diana will ensure you're comfortable. Wait, Jackson caught her arm. You drop this bombshell about interstellar politics and just leave. Something softened in Leona's strange eyes. I understand this is overwhelming, but there are preparations I must make if we are to succeed tomorrow. She hesitated, then added, I didn't choose these circumstances, Jackson, but I believe your presence may prove fortuitous for both our worlds. After she departed, Diana guided Jackson to a suite of rooms. Your temporary quarters, she explained. The ambassador had them prepared with Earth comforts in mind. How long have you worked with them? Jackson asked, studying the odd mix of human and alien design. 2 years, Diana replied. It's been educational. Are they trustworthy, Leona and her people? Diana considered this. They're not human, so they don't think like us, but Ambassador Voltari is more moderate than most Ardelians. She genuinely seems to care about Earth's welfare. For the next several hours, Jackson received a crash course in Ardelian culture. He learned about their hierarchical society, their intricate protocol, and most importantly, the significance of the upcoming reception. The Draconids will try to invalidate your engagement, Diana explained, as a tailor adjusted Jackson's new outfit, a suit of shifting copper-toned fabric that felt like liquid silk. They'll claim it was an accident or that you're unsuitable. I am unsuitable, Jackson pointed out. I'm just a random human architect. Diana smiled mysteriously. Perhaps not as random as you think. What does that mean? Your genetic profile was flagged in our database months ago, she admitted. We've been monitoring you. Jackson froze. Monitoring me? Why? Rare genetic markers that show unusual compatibility with Ardelian physiology, Diana explained. Only about 1 in a million humans has them. So this wasn't an accident, Jackson realized. Leona knew who I was when I offered my seat. The timing and method were unplanned, Diana clarified. But yes, you were of interest to the embassy. Jackson wasn't sure whether to feel manipulated or special. And now I have to convince a bunch of alien diplomats that our engagement is legitimate. Exactly. The Draconids will challenge you directly. Be prepared. The next evening arrived with alarming speed. Jackson found himself standing beside Leona in an embassy ballroom, surrounded by both humans and aliens. The Ardelians were easy to recognize with their copper skin and amber eyes. The Draconids were more unsettling, tall, angular beings with grayish skin and eyes that gleamed like polished steel. "Remember what we practiced," Leona murmured. "Confidence is essential." "Easy for you to say," Jackson whispered back. "You've had decades of diplomatic training. I design buildings." Leona's hand found his, that strange warmth flowing between them. "Your buildings bridge earth and sky, creating harmony from disparate elements. Perhaps that's exactly what we need." Before Jackson could respond, a tall Draconid approached, flanked by others of his kind. "Second Heir Leona," the alien's voice had a metallic quality. "How unexpected to find you newly engaged to a human. Ambassador Krell," he introduced himself to Jackson with a cold stare. "A pleasure," Jackson replied, remembering his coaching. "Is it?" Krell tilted his angular head. "I wonder if you understand what you've committed to. Perhaps this was merely a human misunderstanding." Jackson felt the weight of the room's attention. His answer could impact interstellar relations and possibly Earth's future. He thought of what Diana had told him about the Draconids' exploitative practices, about Leona's faction fighting for more balanced relations. "There's no misunderstanding," Jackson said firmly. "I offered my seat to Leona knowing exactly what it symbolized in Ardelian culture." Krell's metallic eyes narrowed. A human architect with knowledge of obscure Ardelian customs. Unlikely. Jackson smiled confidently, though his heart raced. "My interest in Ardelian culture is well documented. You're welcome to review my recent research." Diana had suggested this bluff. The embassy could backdate digital records if challenged. "Even so," Krell pressed, "royal engagements require compatibility demonstrations. Surely a human cannot perform the traditional rituals." "Ambassador Krell," Leona interjected smoothly, "Jackson has already demonstrated remarkable compatibility. Perhaps you'd care to observe a demonstration." Jackson shot her a panicked look. They hadn't rehearsed any demonstrations. Leona led him to the center of the room, where a crystalline structure rose from the floor at her gesture. She placed her hand upon it, motioning for Jackson to do the same. "Trust me," she whispered. As their hands touched the crystal, it began to glow. Jackson felt a strange resonance flowing between them, similar to when they first touched but magnified tenfold. The crystal's glow intensified, shifting through colors before settling on a brilliant gold that illuminated the entire room. Gasps erupted from the assembled diplomats. Even Krell looked taken aback. "A perfect resonance," Leona announced, her voice carrying authority. "The bond is confirmed." Later, when the reception had ended and the challenges had been withdrawn, Jackson found himself alone with Leona on a balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline. "What happened with that crystal?" he asked. "It measures bioenergetic compatibility," she explained. "The gold resonance is extremely rare, even among Ardelians. It indicates a natural harmony between us." "So we really are compatible," Jackson mused. "Was that what you expected when you arranged to be on my flight?" Leona smiled, the expression transforming her alien features into something Jackson found increasingly beautiful. "I expected potential. I didn't expect this." "And what exactly is this?" Jackson gestured between them. "An opportunity," Leona said softly, for both our worlds, and perhaps, she added, taking his hand, for us as well. Jackson looked at their joined hands, one human, one alien, yet somehow fitting together. I still think this is the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. The universe is full of unexplained phenomena, Leona replied. Sometimes the most improbable outcomes are the most meaningful. As the lights of Seattle sparkled below them, Jackson Porter, ordinary architect turned interstellar diplomat, realized his life had changed irrevocably. And surprisingly, he wasn't sure he wanted it any other way. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.